Yeah. 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 Welcome, everybody, to another fantastic episode of SuperShares. My name is Joe Marquez, and as you know, this is an especially super week of SuperShares because every single day we are bringing you amazing individuals talking about amazing things that are happening at Spring Q. Yes, everybody, you probably know this. If you're watching this show, you know that Spring Q is happening this week in Palm Springs, California, a place that you cannot beat. Right? March 17th through the 19th here in Palm Springs, California. We are celebrating educators. We're celebrating ideas and excitement and everything that you can imagine by seeing each other in person. This is going to be the first time that we've been together in nearly 3 years. The last Spring Q happened in 2019. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? I'm super excited. I'm super excited, not only because I get to see you in person, but because I get to talk to amazing individuals who have passion of education on their minds and the betterment of students on their brains as well. So I want to bring on our guest for today. We have Robyn from Renaissance. Robyn, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Now, for those individuals who don't know you, can you please introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about Renaissance?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thank you so much for the warm welcome and the fantastic energy. So my name is Robyn Shutt, and I am part of the Renaissance team. So Renaissance is, and I will jump into my background, I know I kind of flipped around, but Renaissance is an educational technology company that offers a variety of practice tools, solutions, and products that can help you in your classroom. And I ended up at Renaissance because I was a classroom teacher. I taught first, second, and third grade for 8 years. Specifically in the Bay Area. San Francisco Unified was my last school district I taught in. And I ended up at Renaissance because I found one of the practice tools. I loved it so much. I thought it was a great program. And I just wanted to dive in and help support teachers and schools get the resources they need.
Now, when you were talking about you as an educator in the classroom using the tools from Renaissance, what is it that really kind of had you gravitate towards these? Was it the assessments, the exams, the results? What was it that you said, oh, this Renaissance is key and I have to use it more?
Yeah, so I landed at Renaissance about 3 years ago. And what got me to stay was actually the assessment part, which I think some of my teacher friends would, if they were hearing this, would probably laugh, because that was definitely not my mindset as a teacher, but it was the assessments. That's really what got me to stay, because having taught in the classroom, I know how important data-driven instruction is, but I also know how hard it is to get accurate data from an assessment tool in a timely manner that really closes that feedback loop. So that's what
I love what you're saying, because, when you're talking about effective assessment, we're also playing against this idea that students can be over-assessed, right? And that's not what you're talking about here. You're talking about effective assessments that will help our students almost like in a much, you said it, feedback loop, in a quicker feedback cycle than before.
Yeah, so students are they can definitely be over-assessed. And I think we see that all the time in the education space. And what I like about our assessment tool specifically is that, one, you get there are a variety of assessments you can take. We start everything from adaptive to customizable grade level based assessment. And so you as the teacher and you as the principal, the district, you can determine how many tests you need and how many tests you want to give a student. So the adaptive components that we have, so we have them for reading and math, they're short. They, again, adapt, move up and down as a student is working. And a student can finish the math assessment in about 30 minutes and the reading in about an hour. And you as the teacher can get the appropriate data you need to determine next best steps for instruction. Whether that is you want to dive deeper into their reading score because they're a fifth grader and they seem to really be struggling. So you want to give them a curriculum-based measure test, like a CBM, you can do that. Or if you find one standard and you're like, wow, this whole class is really struggling on it, I want to customize an assessment to give to them. You can do that as well. So there's really a tiered level that you can take that allows you to be effective with your assessments.
Well, it sounds very malleable, right? And that's what our educators need, because if if you're just creating a singular assessment just because it's the same thing you've created year after year, right? You're not meeting the needs of all of our students, because every year you have a different group of students. So every year you should have, like you said, an adaptive assessment that meets their needs, not the needs of your students from last year, right?
Yeah, I could not agree more. We need to change as our classrooms change, as our demographics change, as our schools' needs change. The assessment adapts. So what that means is, as a child is working, and I think adaptive assessments are becoming much more common, is the student's working, it'll progress up and down through those skills that they need to work on, or the skills that they need to master in grade level, K through 12. And you as the teacher can look at your groups as it comes in, and you can say, wow, this group is performing here, this group is here, and you get this kind of variety of information.
Now, when you're talking about creating custom assessments, and the assessments can be adaptive, is this more work for the teacher? Like, because teachers like, oh, this is just like another tool I have to learn to use. It's going to spend more time on learning something and doing something. Is that the case?
No, I love that you asked that question, because no, it's not. So again, we have a variety of assessment tools, and that's why I liked this company. That's why I chose to stay. I always say most schools will start with the adaptive assessment. They just give the adaptive assessment to determine where students fall on this learning progression or on their learning journey. And then an added layer of something you could choose to do or not choose to do, depending on how comfortable you are, how you currently feeling during this educational landscape that we're in. You can choose to create your own if you need additional information. So it's something you can choose to do or not choose to do, depending on how you feel.
And so when we're looking at the assessments, let's say that the teacher gathers the data comes in, and she's like, okay, so some of my students are meeting the needs with this, but others are struggling. Is there like a roadmap? Is there some help that is given so the teachers can be like, okay, here's my plan of action for this group of students, and then here's my plan of action for this group of students?
I love that you asked that question, because Renaissance actually just came out with something called focus skills. So focus skills are the skills that we've essentially looked at the entire country, and they've decided these are the skills that are most important for a student to master at this grade level. And they've done it for K-12. So when you get a child that comes to you and you take this assessment and you get their student growth report, you get the report on how they're performing, it will list out every single standard they need to work on. And again, a lot. You look at this and you're like, wow, they may need 10 standards in this math domain, just that math domain. But there'll be a little asterisk next to certain ones that say, these are the ones you really need to focus on in order for him to reach mastery. So I think kind of the beauty of that report is, I'm going to just give a kind of a story to go with it. Like if you're a third grade teacher and your student is performing you're looking at the geometry domain for your third grade student, and he's falling at a second grade level or even a first grade level, you can really just hone in on those first grade skills to get him to master them as quickly as possible, to move him up into the second grade, and then hopefully master the second grade ones, and finally get him to third grade, where you can focus on the third grade focus skills. And then let's say, fingers crossed, you reached grade level by third grade, you can dive deeper into those supplementary standards. It lines that up for you and says, do these ones, then do these ones, then do these ones, to kind of filter it and make it a little bit more digestible.
Oh, Robyn, I love this fact, because so let's go along with your third grade classroom, right?
Yeah.
If you have students who can't do third grade math, but you're constantly just giving them third grade assessments, like traditionally, this is from my assessment vault, right? I make photocopies of them. I hand them out to my students every year. If the students aren't even up to that level, how are they going to do well, right? And so I love the fact that you said it allows you to go back to those first grade skills to master those, second grade skills to master those, so that you can be successful in the third grade skills.
Yeah, and something else that you just said, like if we're consistently giving them third grade questions and they're not at mastery, one, the child probably already knows that. I mean, I've witnessed that a lot based on the demographics that I worked with, the schools that I chose to work in. I had students that were not performing at grade level, and they became frustrated. They had this really negative taste in their mouth of assessments and school and everything else, because they never got to see their progress. They never felt successful on an assessment. So that's the beauty of an adaptive test, is that if you have a third grade student, it'll kind of bump the questions back. And then they can start feeling successful as they answer more questions, they get them more right. And then eventually the test stops. So it doesn't just keep going, because sometimes adaptive tests and sometimes tests in general, if you get it right, it'll just keep going until finally you reach like a test fatigue and you're like at this level. It'll stop. It'll say, okay, we've asked you enough questions. So it doesn't feel punitive for that child. So not only are you as the teacher getting really good information on where they fall again on their learning journey or progression, whether that's third grade at grade level, second or fifth, the child is also feeling really successful as they take that test. And then it stops so it doesn't burn them out.
Yeah. And test burnout, you're absolutely right, is, I mean, I've taken tests that are like 100 questions long, and you're like, by number 50, you're just like, come on. And so it just means you're tired of sitting there staring at these exams. So having the program be able to be like, you know what, we're good at this moment. We have our data. Let's move on. I think that's absolutely key, because you want students to enjoy the learning process. That is absolutely, a big focus that educators are looking at. Do they enjoy the experience? And if they feel overassessed, or they feel overwhelmed, or they feel they can't do it, or they feel bad about themselves, they're not going to enjoy the experience. Correct?
No, they're not. And I think that often, and especially I guess probably part of the reason why I think my old coworkers, when I taught, would laugh at the fact that I am choosing to partner with a company because I like their assessments, is because assessments often get a bad rap. It's not the assessment necessarily, it's the approach to the assessment. It's the lack of growth mindset we have built into that assessment. It is the lack of language. It's the language that we choose to use with our students when giving the assessment. And so what I like about our adaptive assessments is that time cap. I can tell my kids, and it celebrates growth, first of all. So when you get your report, you can have these conversations and show where they started, where they're going. And then, because again, it stops them, I can really celebrate. Wow, you completed it. That's amazing. Instead of them reaching this point of am I done yet? Am I done yet? And then just it feeling punitive. Because it can be something you celebrate if you look at it from a growth perspective versus are we meeting grade level standards or mastery?
Yeah. And I love the fact that at the beginning you said, a couple of the assessments that are really honed in on are reading and math. And those two subjects were really hit hard during the pandemic, right? Because those two subjects, to me, are very personal between an educator and a student, because a teacher can see in the face of a student if they are struggling when they're trying to read a passage or when they're trying to complete problems, and they can go by and they'd be like, "Yo, don't worry, let me sit down with you. Let's work some of these out." But in a virtual space, that was very difficult to happen. But Renaissance would be able to help that, even in a virtual space, right? Face to face, definitely, but even in a virtual space where it would help the student based on all of the features that you'd already talked about.
Yeah, so it definitely can help. So I think what you're saying is the fact that again, and it is a very personal experience, especially with reading. You need really comprehensive data on where a student falls, not just with their letter sounds, but their comprehension. And not just, we say comprehension, but comprehension encompasses so many different things. It encompasses everything from just, can the child visualize cause and effect, every different reading skill involved in comprehension. And we can really hone in on those specific skills. Is the student asking and answering questions? At what level are they able to do this when they are engaging with their text? It does that, and it does it in a really shortened period of time. So you can determine, again, from their need, you can look and you can see child A they're not the lowest in the class right now. So I don't maybe need to dive into a deeper diagnostic with them until after I do student B.
And, and I was telling one of your colleagues, David, yesterday on our program that I have a very personal relationship right now with the process of reading and understanding, because my daughter is now in kindergarten. This is her first year in kindergarten, and she is an emerging reader. She's learning her sight words. She's learning how to read a sentence, but being able to read a sentence doesn't mean she knows how to comprehend the sentence, right? And so I always, whenever she brings home her For Tonight book, that's what it's called, I have her read the sentence, and I say, "What does that mean? What does that mean? What is that? What is the process? What is the action? What does that sentence mean?" And I make her explain it to me. And if a teacher were to try to do that individually for every single student in their class, it'd be hard to move the class forward at a pretty good rate, right? And it seems like Renaissance can really help with that process.
Well, I want to elaborate a little bit more on what you just said there, because reading is such a multifaceted subject that we kind of, especially again, I taught first and second grade. So we're doing a lot of assessments to determine reading and where a student falls on this reading progression. So are they a fluent reader? To be a fluent reader, not only do you need to decode your words, not only do you need be able to chunk them out and read the sentence. And then you also need to comprehend the sentence. It's two things. So it's the decoding and it's the actual ability to sound out those words. And then it's the comprehension involved with that. We can actually help with that because the adaptive reading assessment program that I'm talking about, it'll assess on a variety of different things. And then you can determine need for your students. And we have a separate assessment that will allow you to take a deeper dive. It's called the CBM, and it allows you to take a deeper dive into each child's specific reading skills, like word count, fluency, chunking. Are they able to do letter sound recognition, things like that? But you can do this initial assessment with all of your kids in a very timely manner, determine need and who needs this additional layer, and then go from there, again, to close that feedback loop, to give interventions as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible.
Effectively and efficiently are two of my favorite words, right? Because there's a lot of things that we do as educators just because they're, we think, well, this is the way I've always done it. I'm just going to continue to do it. But is it effective and efficient? Do you have a tool available to you that can help you create a better experience for the student, but also yourself? That's number one. But number two, it's the story that you just said, the process you just said, it's almost like the classroom has a co-teacher in it, where you have that extra set of eyes and ears to really help you hone in on the students who need that little bit extra help and just create a better experience for that learning journey. Right? I mean, that sounds exciting to me.
Yeah, it's really exciting because it does give you an extra layer and extra additional support to kind of get through that initial screener and the initial benchmarking that we all kind of need to do, especially entering this next school year. We're going to need to determine, where are our students? How are they falling on this learning progression? It'll allow you to do that really quickly, quickly and efficiently, and it's reliable, and you're going to get information that you can use. And then from there, you can take a deeper dive based on because we have a variety of different things you can use. You can take a deeper dive in each child. So it's not just going to give you this surface level screener, which can work for some students because you're going to get what you need. You're going to say, wow, they're tracking, they're great, they're on grade level. I don't need to take a deeper dive. But you're going to have the ones that you want to take a deeper dive, and it'll give you the ability to do that. You can get the first assessment done in one testing window, and then you can determine need from there.
Well, I love this because, again, the lines between home and work for educators have been blurred these last few years, where, your home has become your work and then your work has become your home. But now that teachers are back at school face to face, I truly think they need to create a separation, right? They need to be able to do their work and be at home when they're at home. And I just keep remembering because I worked as an 8th grade science teacher at a junior high for 10 years. And I always remember there was one wing that every Friday there were multiple teachers rolling little crate carts out to their car with all these papers. And I'm like, what are you doing? I have so much grading to do this weekend. And I'm like, but it's the weekend. Right? So it seems to me that Renaissance can really help with that, allow teachers to be the best teacher they can at work, but then be the best person they can be by taking time to themselves at home. And I think right now that's incredibly important, right?
Renaissance can definitely, first of all, I think that the line between home and work has been blurred for teachers for as long as I can remember. I remember helping my great aunt, who was a science teacher, grade her papers. And I'm like, why are we doing this on the weekend? Aren't we supposed to be going to the park? No, but we were grading papers. And so I think that blur has happened. I think as educators, you bring your work home naturally because you're working with people and you're working with students and you love them. But Renaissance can definitely help because not only do we have assessments, but we have practice tools in place that can eliminate that grading. So those assessments, you get the initial data, and then we have tools that will allow you to drive instruction and differentiation to take away that grading. So the grading you are doing is meaningful, and it's not I used to have to grade those multiplication tests, and I was like, why am I looking at these all the time? They're 7, and then I'd forget them, so I just put their stars on wherever and be like, fingers crossed you remembered, because I lose them at my house. But it can help eliminate some of that. It really can, because you get the assessment, and then it feeds into so many great practice solutions on top of it. So not only do you have the assessments that are quick, but you have the practice tools to make everything efficient and go smoothly.
Now, Robyn, you are going to be in Palm Springs, right? You're going to be at the Renaissance booth. Are there going to be demos at the Renaissance booth? Can people come up and say, hey, I saw this on the SuperShare, or I've heard about Renaissance. Can you show me a little bit more? Is there going to be some of that stuff happening in your booth?
There will be 3 of us there, and there'll be definitely demos and everything we like to do. I know myself and my colleagues as well. We really like to get to know you and understand what you are looking for to ensure that we give you the best solution possible. But they are going to be there. You'll be able to play around a little bit. We can show you some of the kind of the reports that you can get from our assessments, as well as the practice solutions they feed into. But yeah, we will be there. So
excellent. Well, we are excited. I'm definitely going to come by and say hi, because I love the Renaissance team. So I have to go over there and meet every single one of you and to give you a high five, a fist bump, an elbow bump, whatever you're comfortable with. But I can't wait for our members to come by. I mean, it sounds exciting.
I am very excited. I went to Q as a teacher of probably 7 years ago and haven't been back since. And one of my favorite things to do is talk to educators, especially about literacy and math solutions and what you're doing. All my friends are still teachers, so it's still my favorite thing to do. So I'm very excited, because teachers are some of the most engaging and the funnest people to do conferences with.
No, it is. It's the best place to talk shop, talk tech, and just to have fun with one another. And I'm excited that, you know, after 3 long years, we get to be together again as a Spring Q group, because 3 years has just been way too long not to see everybody.
It's gonna be exciting. I'm excited for all of this, everything you just said.
All right. Well, Robyn, thank you so much for being on the show today. Again, everybody, Robyn will be at the Renaissance booth at Palm Springs Convention Center, March 17th to 19th. Definitely go by and say hi. And hey, tell her, if you saw her on the SuperShare, tell her that you saw her there, and tell her, like, hey, this is why I came by the booth. Okay, because it'll help better so that the viewership turns into the people actually watching. So thank you, Robyn, so much for being here, and all the hard work you did as an educator, but also all the hard work you are doing to move education forward through Renaissance. So thank you so much. You got it. Well, thanks, everybody. That was fantastic. I think that conversation really hits home to what Renaissance does, and also really hits home to the aspect of using technology to create a hyper feedback loop so that you can help your students in a quicker manner, but efficiently and effectively. And I think Renaissance does a fantastic job at that. So again, definitely, if you're in Palm Springs this week, definitely visit that Renaissance booth and talk about how you're going to use assessments to move your students forward. So again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being an educator, and I cannot wait to see you in Palm Springs this week. Have yourselves